barbell training is not just about the muscles. And I can't stand I even hate saying that because it's about tissues. It's about the tendons, the ligaments. It's about the neurological changes, the metabolic change. It's about so many more things than just muscle. And I think once I realized that it was a lot more than just moving load.
Welcome to the Wits and Weights podcast. I'm your host, Philip Pape, and this twice-a-week podcast is dedicated to helping you achieve physical self-mastery by getting stronger, optimizing your nutrition, and upgrading your body composition. We'll uncover science-backed strategies for movement, metabolism, muscle, and mindset with a skeptical eye on the fitness industry so you can look and feel your absolute best. Let's dive right in.
Wits and Weights community, welcome to another episode of the Wits and Weights podcast. Today, I am sitting down with my friend, fellow lifter, and client, Tony Perri. We first met in Andy Baker's Barbell Club, where we soon realized our unique personalities complemented and pushed each other to new heights of strength, health, and physique. He would constantly tell me how weak I was, triggering the deeply competitive nature in me to keep improving my lifts, and I would shake my head at his revulsion to carbs, to the point where eventually we both realized each of us was right. What we have in common is a love for the process and self-improvement, a curiosity for learning about ourselves as individuals, and in particular, men getting older who want to be strong and capable for the rest of our lives. When he finally saw the light and realized he wanted to learn more about nutrition to gain control over his body fat and health, we worked together on what turned out to be a mini cut for 6 weeks, where he lost 15 pounds of fat, 4 inches in his waist size, and 8% body fat, which is a huge improvement in body composition and physique. His blood pressure, resting heart rate even came down. He increased his carbs, maintained most of his strength during the cut. Most importantly, Tony was extremely curious throughout the process, always asking great questions as we discovered his individual body's response along the way so we can make better adjustments. In this episode, we'll discuss his transformative journey, the intricacies of nutrition and barbell training, and the mental hurdles along the way. Tony's insights, which at this point are at the core of his being, could radically change your perspective and approach to fitness, nutrition, and health. A bit about Tony. Tony has been active all his life, playing different sports, including racquetball, tennis, mountain biking, road biking, and running. In his 30s, he did a few years of calisthenics, where he competed in obstacle course races before realizing that functional bodyweight training and occasional competitions provided diminishing returns and very little carryover to regular life. Once he began barbell training in his late 30s, it became his central mode of training due to its incredible carryover and longevity benefits. Tony packed on muscle and some fat and learned that his ability to be strong is dependent on his ability to recover, both of which are dependent on the quality of his nutrition and sleep. Since barbell training is a mental activity expressed physically, the challenge to continually drive progress has boosted his confidence, making him a better spouse, father, and business operator. Tony, my brother, welcome to the big time.
Philip, how we doing?
How's it going, man? You had to sit there and take it, but, that is the story.
Not bad, you weak bastard.
That's right.
Not bad.
Getting stronger every day. We're trying.
We're
trying.
You do impress me.
Hey, man, we impress each other.
So I hate to compliment you.
Yeah, I know. It just rankles you. I know.
But you do impress me. So, yeah.
So Tony and I have a good sense of humor, which I really appreciate because, there's a lot of just, I'm not going to use the word, but they are out in the world that just don't have that. And we try to keep it light.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So I want to start with the personal side before we dive into the specific experience here with nutrition. I mentioned in the intro how your interests have evolved over about a decade plus, right? You used to do functional training, the OCRs, and you train differently today. So tell us about that transition in a bit more detail.
I did the OCRs after I did calisthenics because it was a lot of fun. Naturally, I'm pretty athletic, so I did very well in that form of training. But the biggest downfall with that, I realized it was external validation. I would go to the gym and I would change up the workout every single day and I would do all sorts of different stuff. And people would say, "Ooh, that's cool," or this and that. And I did improve at certain things. I did great at the OCRs, but you mentioned my perspective evolved, and it was really based in realizing that what I was doing, A, was only fun in the moment, and B, I did it because I liked the audience. And so there was no satisfaction. The diminishing returns added up really quickly for me. So there was a hole. There was a really big fitness hole in my life, and I didn't really know what that was. So
that's so really two good things there, right? One, the idea that you can have fun, but at the end of the day, it's not really fun because it's this instant gratification type of fun. Like
that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, kind of like, I talk about, people say, well, isn't it hard to do this or that? Like, well, in the moment it's hard, but long term it's fun. Here you're talking about in the moment it's fun, but long term, what are you getting out of it? Right.
I did a lot of running for my training, and that's one of the reasons I was so successful in my OCRs. I was always top 5. I trained as running mostly. I would do 6 miles, 7, 8 miles. I did a 13 mile, at I think it was an 8-minute mile, maybe 7 30-minute mile. But that was probably the hardest I worked at that time. But after I got to a certain point in running, again, there was a void in me. I'm like, I don't want to just run, and I don't want to flip around. I don't want to work toward one-handed pull-ups. So there was just a void that was not filled.
All right. So you've got this void, this emotional void, not necessarily enjoying your training. What was the internal switch or the revelation that led you to embrace barbell training specifically?
The objectivity. Well, I'm going to say a general statement. When we strength train long-term, we do it for the durability. It makes us stronger. We feel more durable. We feel better, all that. I like the objectivity of barbell training. Once I started the NLP, I was hooked because I had data on the improvement or the regression, right? Now, I recorded myself every set, probably to a fault because I overthought it, but I can see, again, I had data. I could see what I was doing. Because in my head, I'm like, I just squatted this, right? And I think I sent you a video a while ago of my squat, like in 2017. And I look at the video, and it was terrible, really. Not depth. My foot, I wasn't over my midfoot. Wasn't bracing, right? So from the data point, a barbell training offered me objective data for improvement. And I really latched onto that because before that point, again, it was very immediate gratification. It was subjective. It was what I want to do that day, and it didn't work. So barbell training really, they produced the data no matter how I felt when I walked into the gym, no matter, when I walked in or when I walked out. I looked at the paper and I'm like, okay, this is the progression or the regression. And that was that void that was filled. It was showing me, okay, this is actual data of what you're doing, right? I don't do the workout of the day thing. I don't do the subjectivity of I feel like doing this. That doesn't work for me. And that was the switch. You asked about the switch. That was the switch. Right?
Yeah, I can relate to that, Tony, because we probably had very similar experiences where you almost dread the workout of the day, but knowing that you just added 5 pounds and did it again and again, now you're like, I want to go in there so if I could keep that moving.
Added a pound, I added a rep, added a set. I shortened the rest times. I switched up these 2 exercises, and even though the first exercise was second last week, I maintained the load, right? There's all these different ways that you can progress. And that was really key for me because I had evidence. It was actual objective evidence of progress. Yeah,
I love it. You know how much I love data and talk about it all the time. And I think a lot of people conflate data with obsession, whereas in reality, when they start tracking data, they realize it sort of liberates the uncertainty, liberates you from the uncertainty, the ambiguity. And you talk about objectivity. It's the microcosm of that is a single squat or a single rep. And I haven't talked about that in a while, so I'm glad you brought that up. The idea that even when we do a squat, our form is done in a way to ensure objectivity from rep to rep, right? Yeah, so even down to that microcosm, which you won't get from, I don't know, box jumps or something.
No. I mean, even with that, this is again why I record myself to ensure that consistency. Because say you go from 100 pounds 1 week to 105 to 110, but you're inching up. Okay, you have evidence that you're not progressing. You're reducing the load. That stress stimulus is going down. So you got to maintain all the same parameters and then progress, which is why I'm a big fan of recording. I mean, different angles. Look at them.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. It's not just are you progressing, but are you regressing, and then you can decide what's causing that.
You could tell yourself so much you could convince yourself of so much. Record one set Look at yourself. Look at your hips. Now go from this angle. The bar's traveling forward. You may not. You may think my squat is great, and then you look at his side view. The bar's traveling forward. It's like,
yeah, totally agree. I mean, if you're listening to this, do that like in your next workout. Literally record yourself and be your own worst critic, and then feel free to share it with others who might be able to give you feedback.
Exactly the point. Prove yourself wrong. I look for it. And sometimes it guts me because I'm feeling great about a lift, and I'm like, I have a little bit of doubt, and I'm like, you got to record yourself from this angle. Look for this one thing. Even though it feels good, you feel like everything's working well, look at it, because reality is going to tell you. Yeah. Reality is going to tell you whether or not it actually, you just got to listen. Yeah.
Now, did this newfound love for the process and objectivity and data, did it have the reverse effect on you as well of translating into your philosophy or approach to life in general? Like, we can call it discipline, but whatever word you want to use. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about that. Yeah.
Yeah. You know me at this point a little better than many people, but it barbell training, the not giving yourself an out in barbell training and being very aggressive and looking for the ugly things and doing the hard work, the grind, that fit me. It really fit my personality. So from there, that was the athletic void that was filled, and I could be a critical bastard with myself. And I mean, that's why I don't mind being a critical bastard with other people, because guess what? I am that with me. Yeah. So it's like, I don't shield myself from any ugly critique. I will look for it and and look for those flaws. Because once you find those flaws, I was just explaining this to my son this morning, when you're solving a problem, the hardest part is finding the problem. Once you identify the problem, then you can solve it. Yeah. Most of your work is going to be looking and searching for what the problem is. And then you can say, okay, this is a problem, and this is how we problem solve it. I do that with training all the time. Again, it's a mental activity expressed physically. I'm very mental about it. It's not a physical or emotional thing. It's how can I problem solve these things? Look for the flaw. Once I find the flaw, I can fix it. And we just talked about it after I was done with my cut. My squat was terrible. And I figured out it was my leverages that were way off. And I've never been in that position before. So I had to think about it. And once I figured that out, other things came together. It feels fantastic. Yeah. And I'm already back to where I started.
I think it's a great principle-based approach, because you said you got into a brand new experience and a new problem that you'd never encountered before. But rather than think, okay, there's something wrong with me or there's something wrong with the process, it was, there's a new problem that just needs a solution, right?
Absolutely.
Which applies to everything, about nutrition and everything else. So,
absolutely. I don't assume I know the answer. I'm like, what is it? And that's why I will ask people at the gym. I'm very respectful about it. I'll ask people, I'll seek out your advice. What's your perspective on this? What am I not seeing? Just so I can see it and then boom, solve it, move forward. That's it. There's no ego in there. There's no ego.
It's curiosity. It's pure curiosity, which is awesome.
There you go. Curiosity. Yeah.
I feel that. Yeah. I feel that. So you mentioned it being a grind, and I know you weren't necessarily saying that in a negative. You were just more of a momentum and persistence perspective, but just explain that to people who may be hesitant about even getting into barbell training, thinking it's this really hard thing.
It's hard to get around the fact that barbell training is hard. I embrace the fact that it's hard. And I actually am one of the people who really like that grind, the hard work. I like to be in the trenches. I don't like to have too much of a tailwind. I'd like to be working against something, because again, when you're working against something, that's what resists your will, and that's what allows your will to exert itself even harder. When things are not that hard, we're not going to work as hard to overcome them. So I like to have the challenge. I like to grind. Sometimes it's more fun than others, but it's hard to translate it, because a lot of this is my own personality, my own take on it. And some of it is just the fact that barbell training is progressive. Barbell training is going to be hard. And I realize not everybody is going to progressively overload. I see it in the gym all the time, right? So if someone is interested, I have to qualify this. If someone is interested in getting stronger, fitter, more durable, resilient, you have to do progressive overload, and you have to do the grind. You have to search and embrace those last 2-3 reps of that triple, the 4th, 5th reps of the triple. You have to embrace that to get the benefit.
Yeah.
Right. You may not like it. You may not go toward it like me, but you have to do that if you want to progress with barbell training.
Okay.
I just happen to be one of those psychos who embraces that.
You got to get the mechanical tension, right? We had a whole conversation about that this week, but
You
hold
gotta
on.
get
Let's just put one more lens on it, because is it harder to do that, or is it harder to not progress and go into the gym over and over again and not progress? Like, what are your thoughts
The
on
latter.
that? Yeah.
The
Okay.
latter.
So I just want to be clear for people, like, it's different types of hard. There's the hard that helps you grow and feel fulfilled, and there's the hard that's just you're stuck.
You're right.
Yeah.
And that's a good question you just asked, because during my cut, it was very hard for me to switch my training lens from grind to just hold on to whatever muscle you can, because the priority was to maintain the deficit. The priority is not to gain mass or set PRs. So I had to change my perspective to just do what you can.
Mm-hmm.
That's not me.
Yeah.
I had to accept it's not me at all. I had to just, I couldn't stand it, but I'm like, this is the right thing for the long term.
Yep. It is frustrating. And I know you've experimented with it and talked to me this week about the next time you do it, maybe you'll try a different mode of training that still holds muscle, but maybe gives you a little more of that enjoyment of the training itself.
Yeah. Just again, you doing more of the, embracing more mechanical tension through the rep ranges that we talked about. Yeah.
All right, so let's dive into the nutrition, right? So going back to your past, and then we'll get to now. You had guidance from a nutritionist during your calisthenics days.
I did work with a nutritionist. I was definitely, I think I was 180, 185, but I was untrained. I was sedentary, right? I was in terrible shape. So she, we didn't track anything. What she did was she wrote the meals, and basically she cut out the fat, and we ate a lot of whole foods. And it was just lean meat, a lot of greens, a lot of grains. It was boring, but the weight flew off. Once I hit 168, she's like, we got to stop. We got to stop with the, the cutting and whatnot. I wasn't strength training per se at that point. And when I say per se, I was doing like sprints in my yard, push-ups on the picnic table, and that kind of stuff, right? I enjoyed the process. She did individualize it every week. She'd write the meal plan, and then she'd do how you doing? She'd do check-ins, and then we would change certain things based on the outcome. I learned how to eat cleaner, but that's pretty much it. Just eat whole foods, cleaner. I mean, the grocery bill was ridiculously expensive because we were putting all sorts of stuff in it. And it's like, that was the long and short of that process. I don't think I learned a lot.
Okay. You didn't learn. Okay. I was going to ask
action.
That.
It was a successful from the action standpoint.
Yes.
I lost weight, ate better foods, but I didn't learn much. And this is why when I talked to you initially before the cut, I'm like, I'm not just interested in cutting weight. I want to actually learn stuff from this process. That's why. That's exactly why. Because I learned from that process, like, I don't want to just succeed. I'm not ends driven. I want the means.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you did. And it's funny because I have clients who are super curious and want to learn from day one. I have others that they want the results, but then they're surprised that it's really that they develop skills and they learn a lot. Because I like I said, I want you to fire me after 6 months. You could do this on your own and keep working together if you have new goals and challenges. But meal plans are not the way to go. Cutting out foods is not the way to go. I think you know that by now.
Hey listeners, this is Philip Pape, and I'm excited to announce our upcoming totally free 21-day challenge starting December 1st. It's called the Wits and Weights No Diet Holiday Body Recomp Challenge. This challenge is about learning how to achieve body recomposition. That's building muscle and losing fat at the same time without dieting or restriction throughout the holidays. I'll be giving you free videos, guides, and personalized coaching in a private group chat to help you enjoy the holidays while being satisfied and guilt-free. The kickoff call is Friday, November 17, and the link to enroll is in the show notes. No matter what episode you are listening to, don't worry. If you're hearing this after November 17, you can still register and get access to the replay and resources before the challenge starts on December 1st. Again, to join the Wits and Weights No Diet Holiday Body Recomp Challenge to build muscle and lose fat without dieting through the holidays, click the link in my show notes. Now back to the episode.
Understanding, making the informed choice for yourself about where you're going to eat and what you're not going to eat. And it's not the end of the day if you have Oreo cookies.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. I love Oreos. Like we said, Oreos, Hydrox,
Me too.
dip them in milk. Good stuff. So, okay. So that was your past of nutrition. We're going to eventually connect that to the present. I do want to tie in the training a little bit more because you mentioned the starting strength NLP, which is the novice linear progression, which for the listener is a 3-day full body program to get very strong very quickly. You said you didn't seek out a coach at the time. You didn't attend a seminar. What was your reasoning for going in alone, and what was that like?
My idea of training from scratch is that if you have some kind of a safety net, you're going to take it, right? So what I did was I put everything on the table and I said, I am ultimately responsible for learning this. I had the starting strength books. I had the videos. And I accepted that it was not perfect. It was not comprehensive. But I was so new to the sport that I didn't want to expose myself to so many different resources because I didn't have the tools to discriminate between those resources. So I kept it simple. I did what I could with the videos and the books, and I just trained on my own through recording myself and critiquing myself to the point where I was satisfied that I had done everything I could in my head to train and figure out and improve. And that's when I got Andy Baker. That's when I had signed up with his group because I'm like, I realized that I'd taken my own brain as far as I could. And I took it really far. I got to tell you, like I bashed myself. Again, it's just my personality, but there were times where I'd have a pen and paper and I'm trying to figure it out, like just solving a puzzle. That's all it was to me, was solving a puzzle. And my NLP took a while because I did a lot of resets because my videos showed that my form was terrible. So I reset the weight. Yeah. So that process, it taught me so much because it was so intense. It was just me. I had nobody. It was just me. There's no lifting buddies, right? It was a great process. It was sloppy. It took long. But at the end of it, I had a lot of confidence because I was the one who figured it out, whatever I figured out.
Yeah, I understand that process of self-experimentation, which you can take to a certain level, but sometimes, right, you want help. So you mentioned you didn't have the tools to discriminate between the resources, right?
I didn't.
You weren't necessarily. You thought it would be just spreading yourself too thin to go all these different directions. Is that what you're getting at?
Well, it's a good question. So I realized that. The SS crew, mainly Rip, he was on the videos, knew what the heck he was talking about. It's easy to see that because he's simple, he's upfront, he's very objective. Yep. He will talk about the simplest thing for 10 minutes and lay out every single part of it. So he knows what he's talking about. So I said, I trust this source. I am not experienced enough to meet through all this other stuff to see who else is going to be a positive influence. So I said, for now, I'm just going to do this one source, not forever. I'm just going to do this one source until I have a basis. And then I will allow myself to open up the doors. This is one thing I think people screw up about social media. They look up, they just confuse themselves and they distract themselves with all these different resources. And then they wind up where?
Yeah, nowhere. It's a shiny object syndrome.
Exactly. That's a shiny object syndrome. And I resisted that and it worked very well. So it was a great idea I had.
Yeah, it's
to be
funny.
humble.
No, it is funny you say that. You remember probably early in starting strength when you looked at form checks, there were different places to see form checks, right? They had their own community on Facebook, but there was also the Reddit community that they made fun of because it's just every man for himself. There's no moderation whatsoever. And so even in the starting strength Reddit forum, you could get led the wrong direction with a bad form check,
That's it. Yeah. I wanted to insulate myself from that because I recognized I didn't have the ability to not see bullshit from good stuff. So I said, I'm only going to look at starting strength until I grow a little bit. And then the door's open. Now I look at all sorts of stuff. Sure. And I could be like, idiot, you know what you're talking about. Good. Oh, look further into that. You
got the judgment built up now. Yeah. That nice armor of judgment.
I'll judge the hell out of anything at this point.
I think you're going to like next week. Cody Anino is going to be on. He's like I think he's the only guy in Connecticut that's a starting strength coach.
I think there's only one, right? Yeah.
And he actually helped me for one session and fix
with your squat,
fix my squat
right?
and deadlift and press, or no, squat and press. So but again, you have to know to discriminate and find those resources. Okay, so you and I, we always talk about the value of either. There's the people that want to max out all the time, right? Like on starting strength in your NLP, that's effectively what you're doing. You're maxing out your 3x5 or your 1x5
and you should
session.
Exactly.
But then there's the idea of making progress, which at some point you hit a wall, right? When you become an intermediate lifter and you're not always hitting PRs, or you get injured, or you have recovery issues, or you go on vacation. So, I mean, what is your perspective, just for the listener, on when you'd focus on PRs versus when you wouldn't?
When you focus, okay, are you talking about? Is there two questions in there?
Sorry, what's the value of maxing out versus making progress without necessarily always maxing out?
Okay, so maxing out, period. There's no point in maxing out if you're a novice. This is pretty common knowledge, because every single session, since you can recover so quickly, every single session is a max, right? Once you get to a certain point where your recovery takes a longer period of time, you maxing out, it does have a certain benefit, because specifically if you're in a percentage-based program, because your percentages are based off your 1 rep max, right? Also, rep max at like 1 RMs, they're going to teach you to grind. Like to do a hard 1 RM is a completely different skill set than a 3 RM. You're putting everything on the line for that 1 max. And if you're going to make it a regular process, you have to learn how to program well, because that 1 RM is going to drain your nervous system, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're going to this is why the random maxing out is so stupid, because it drains so many resources. You're not thinking,
hey, I'm going to test my deadlift today. I'm going to test my deadlift.
Yeah. If you're going to max out well, you got to think about a week from now, right? Yeah. If you max out your deadlift, your squat and your deadlift are going to be affected. If you're, let's say, generally, if you're after 30, I'm going to say 10 to 20 days, it's going to be affected, right? If you're younger, you'll probably be able to recover a little bit faster from that. Mm-hmm. That's huge, because if you're in a training cycle where you're doing weekly training and you just did one lift that's going to affect you for 10, 14 days, guess what? Your whole training has to change for the next couple of weeks. That's a big cost to pay. So if you're going to max out, it does have benefits. It recruits a whole lot of muscle fibers. It gives you it can give you confidence. It can be very humbling. It tests your form, but it's really going to task the rest of your training. So I think you really got to take it seriously. And if not, you're just going to be spinning your wheels. You're not going to be setting.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Maxes.
I think that's one reason we both like Andy's conjugate program, right? Because you rotate through what you're maxing out, which is an innovative concept, because you wouldn't necessarily know intuitively that a back squat versus a front squat wouldn't both tax you out the same. It tax you the same for one arm, but it doesn't.
Because it cycles the stress. So a max effort front squat's not going to completely drain you for the following week's max effort box squat, right?
Yep. I
don't do the conjugate. I do the 852, and I talked to Andy about it, because I've really morphed my programming. I've melded basically conjugate and 852 so it allows me to hit higher intensity lifts. So for people who don't know what 852 is, you do an 8 rep max for your working set for the first week. Second week is 5 rep max. Third week is a 2 rep max. What I did is I made my 2s week a 2s/1 week. So if my lifts are really progressing, my body feels great, I'm not just going to go for a 2 on that 2s week. I'll go for a single. Right.
Okay.
And it'll be draining, but guess what? The following week, it's an 8 rep max.
Cool.
Load comes down. It's more of a work capacity thing. So that's how I program deliberately. Again, the key is deliberately programming your max effort lifts, because if you don't, your strength training is going to be shot. That's how I program the max effort, and it's actually working out pretty well.
Yeah. Let me ask you that. I know we're going down a programming rabbit hole, which didn't necessarily intend to, but I think it's awesome because people are really fascinated about that. For when you do the 2s, on 2s week, do you still hit the 2 at the intended load for 2 and then go for a 1?
No,
you skip that. You kind of skip that level and just go for 1.
Yeah, that's too much, because the 2 is the 2 rep max. So say you're which is basically 92 to 95% of your 1 rep max.
Well, wait, is it rep max, or it's a max for 3 sets of 2?
It's the idea is a two rep max.
A single 2 rep max.
Now, depending upon your training, you can do 3 sets of that. I do not. Okay. I don't respond well to multiple sets.
All right.
Again, you have to individualize it. So,
yep.
To answer your first question, I will know if I'm getting close to a 1 rep max attempt instead of a 2. If the previous week in 5s I hit like a 7, right? So, for example, the other week I did it on 5's week, I hit 7, right? So I know that I'm progressing. I might be able to have the strength and progress to do a 1 RM instead of just a 2. If I grinded against that 5 RM, if I only hit 4 reps or barely hit the 5th, I'm going to know that next week I'm probably just going to get a 2. Maybe I'm going to have to drop the load a little bit. See what I'm saying?
Okay, so again, you're doing a top set on each of these, the A5. You're not doing 2 or 3. You're just doing a top set.
Not with squat and deadlift anymore.
Okay.
I do 1 top set and I'll do 10% back offs.
10% back off.
With pressing, I can do top sets through the roof.
And on your top set, sounds like you will push past the programmed reps if you can. So
that's the thing. Yeah. Okay. If I program a certain load. So again, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I didn't know the other day that I was going to be able to hit 7 on that load. I thought I was going to go for 5 because the previous cycle, 5, I did 5 pounds less, and you incrementally increase 5 pounds each cycle. So I'm like, I'm just going to go for 3, 350 is what I got programmed. This is what I'm going to do. And I just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's pretty good. Right. I wasn't a hero after that. I dropped the load 10%, but that told me that the squat is progressing where the 2's week might actually become a 1 week.
Yeah, I love it. And for people listening, like who are confused in any way, like it took you a long time to get to this point, right? It took like the basics and then more advanced programming that was still sort of templated, then getting into a barbell club where you got feedback, then individualized coaching, and now you can kind of tweak yourself. Right?
Yeah. It's trial and error. Critique yourself, but go easy on yourself. You're not going to get it in 1 week or 1 month or 6 months. It's going to take a while to figure out I have my own programming now. No one told me that.
So there's some parallels to this on the nutrition side because you and I knew each other for a while before you reached out for help specifically as a client. Early on, you reached out to talk, right? We had like one of my free calls that I do, and we chatted about your outlook and what you could do. And you're like, yeah, I'm not ready. I don't need to hire you right now, but I understand where you're going. And for a while we went back and forth. Like you would share your data with me. I'd say, you got to eat more carbs. You'd say, no way. And we go back and forth.
Yeah, exactly.
But your experience before, I view it as, and correct me if I'm wrong, like a form of intuitive eating, right? Your routine allowed you to maintain your weight for a while without tracking. And you were eating the whole foods and stuff. Maybe some of that you had learned from the past experience.
Yeah.
And then I came along and I said, hey, maybe more tracking, you get more precision, more objectivity, right? If you're going for a change in your body count, that's the key.
Yes.
Right? If you want to really cut and do it efficiently. So what are your thoughts on all that? The intuitive eating side, the tracking skills, et cetera.
Yeah. So intuitive eating, I think, is a skill like anything else. And I'm big on people acquiring skills so that you can have independence. That being said, if you don't know much about nutrition, your intuitive eating is only going to be up to that level, right? So when we say intuitive eating, we act like it's this universal value, like I'm just going to eat intuitively and everybody's going to perform the same way. We are not. So I can now, since I've, worked with you and learned more about macros and how to balance them, I can eat intuitively, right? But how I eat intuitively has changed because I am more informed and effective at eating, right? So in terms of bulking and cutting, I would prefer to be more precise. Therefore, tracking, I would lean on MacroFactor to track, right? I still track. I'm at maintenance right now. I still track, but I'm more loose about it because I have a better understanding of things. So I really think intuitive eating and tracking they don't have to be at war. They can work. They can both be tools that are skills that you can use at different times. And if you have the ability to use, if you have the certain ability to use either one of them, then you're a fuller, more independent person than if you just did one. And that's when I first started talking to you, I was eating intuitively, but I had a lot of holes. So what's the sense, right? You want to learn the basics, start tracking, see it, and then I can eat intuitively again, go back to tracking, learn more, and basically ratchet my way toward just a better way of nutritional, life.
Yeah.
I with it. Yeah.
I love the way you put it, how it's acquiring skills so you gain independence, and the way you've done it has changed, right? Because I think most people are eating quote unquote intuitively, and it's terrible, right?
Exactly. And again, I hate to compliment you, but I'm really happy with what I learned from you working with me. Like what's specifically carbohydrates, drop the fats, don't need to eat too much fat. I eat plenty of protein. And another thing that you really helped me see is food is just energy. It's just energy, right? And if you approach it from a weekly intake standpoint rather than daily, you have more flexibility. Like, for example, yesterday I accidentally ate in a deficit, right? I think I was even 10 grams of protein short. No big deal.
Yeah.
Just eat a little bit more today, right? It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Just make up for it.
I love that. Yeah.
As long as at the end of the week, you're still eating what you need to eat, you're fine. Right?
Yeah. Don't stress it. I mean, clients all the time when they check in and it's like, I'm off of my targets. It's like, it's okay. It's okay. Obviously if you're, thousands and thousands of calories off, that's going to be a different discussion. But most people are, if you're aiming for a target, you're going to be in the ballpark. That's good enough. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And just nudge yourself in either direction. You overeat one day or for a couple days, just take it easy the next couple.
Shout out to Felipe. I know Felipe for a long time, and I know how passionate he is about healthy eating and body strength. And that's why I chose him to be my coach. I was no stranger to dieting and body training, but I always struggled to do it sustainably. Philip helped me prioritize my goals with evidence-based recommendations while not overstressing my body and not feeling like I'm starving. In 6 months, I lost 45 pounds without drastically changing the foods I enjoy, but now I have a more balanced diet. I weight train consistently, but most importantly, I do it sustainably. If a scientifically sound, healthy diet and a lean, strong body is what you're looking for, Philip Pape is your guy.
Tell us about your thoughts. Okay, so I was out with my family. This was like on a weekend, and my wife and daughters, they were like in the bathroom or something, and you had texted me your macrofactor image. This is before we were working together, and you said what would the ratios be, or not the ratios, like what would the macro levels be in your opinion? And I said pretty much flip the fats and carbs, right? It was like way more carbs, and you were just, besides the way you responded, you're like, that's ridiculous. I don't know what you said. But that was, tell me your thoughts at that time. What were you thinking, and what your experience told you that this guy's nuts at the moment?
I didn't know how to consume that many carbohydrates without consuming ultra processed foods.
Yeah.
And I remember asking you, what do I eat? And you gave me some suggestions. You're like, well, white potato, sweet potato, rice. And I'm like, looking at myself and I'm like, wow, I just asked a question that was a stupid question, but it was good that I asked a stupid question. And I understood that most of my eating, thanks to the first nutritionist, was all those free foods, greens. I would eat greens and colorful things that don't have a lot of caloric value. I was eating nutritionally dense foods, specifically micronutrient dense foods. But when it came to the carbohydrate macro, I really wasn't consuming a lot. Right. Yeah. So that's why after you're like, you got to flip those numbers. I'm like, how do I do that? And so now I literally just had chicken and rice. No problem. I'm getting used to it. I've gotten used to it now, and I love it.
Yeah.
At the beginning, it was hard because, you're switching fats and carbs. It's like your diet is drastically changing.
It's true. Because fats come with a lot of proteins, and then fats and carbs are often together in processed foods. And it's like, what do you exactly do you eat? Yeah.
Yeah, and fats can be calorically dense, right? Yep. And it's like, it was jarring at first, but I realized that I needed to make a change. And I'm like, this is the guy that helped me make the change, and slowly just implemented the changes to now. There's less inertia to doing that. Actually, there's no inertia to doing that now. It's just
you had to get through that comfort zone. I kind of expand that comfort zone.
I had to get through it. Exactly.
Well, for people listening who are like maybe worried about increasing their carbs, and I definitely had this is a very common story, to be honest, in terms of going from lower to standard or higher carbs. I have a lot of women that say, well, I feel bloated or I have digestive issues or whatever. There is an adaptation period. What was that like if you went through that?
There was no physical adaptation part.
Right.
Probably just had more energy. I had the same cliche that many people have. It was probably I just accepted the ignorance. It makes me fat. It makes me slow. It makes me gain weight. It makes me hold water.
There you go.
After, I let you influence me. I said, this guy knows what he's talking about. I'm just going to listen and do it. Whatever psychological BS I had was just set aside, and I just did it. And physically, I felt fine.
Yeah. And it helped you with your energy and recovery?
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I'm not rushing to a bulk right now, because my diet changed. I'm sticking to maintenance. My lifts are doing great. My recovery is great, right? Strength is good. Once I get to a certain point of plateauing, then I'll just bulk a little bit, right? The carbs have definitely helped with recovery, with energy, with pretty much with everything. I think looking back on it, I really misunderstood certain biological feedback I was receiving as not having enough protein when it was really not having enough carbohydrates.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I remember you asked about, like the protein sparing effects of carbs. And we went down that rabbit hole of, the body, how it will use protein if it doesn't have enough carbs and convert that to glucose. It doesn't go straight to your fat. People like to think that, but it doesn't. It's going to go and use up some protein, which then prevents its availability for muscle building. So when you're gaining, we know this from keto diets that the people on keto gain like at 1/5 the rate of muscle gain of people that aren't, so.
Oh, because of the protein sparing.
Yeah, that's it. Crazy.
It's just carbohydrates are the boogeyman, and hopefully this BS stops.
Yeah.
But
I hope so.
They're the boogeyman for no good reason.
Yeah.
For no good reason.
So speaking of recovery beyond that, right? I know you believe in the value of not only nutrition, but also sleep and just recovery in general, especially as we get older. To the point where I feel the way you message it is like that almost should be the first thing you think about before you start programming, your lifts and your week. What are your thoughts? That's just my opinion of how it comes across.
What should be the first thing?
What are your thoughts on recovery in general, basically, especially for people in like their 40s and 50s?
Training is sleep and is sleep and nutrition, right? Training is that because again, you can't put garbage in your vehicle and expect the vehicle to go very far, right? So I don't think about recovery because I have mastered certain points of this. I try to get really good sleep, continuous sleep, and I work on eating whole foods, and now specifically more carbs, right? So that automatically fills in that maxes out my ability to recover. And then we have the other stuff like stress and whatnot, which psychologically we try to balance that. But that's recovery. I don't roll around on a foam roller. I don't use the massage gun. I mean, if I have a really, really sore, if I have a really bad knot, which doesn't happen very often, I'll take the massage gun to it. But I don't do this like the what do you call it, static stretch recovery and the foam roll crap. No, it's eating good foods. I got to get good food in the body. I got to sleep, let the body rest, and I have to program smart. Meaning, I don't go out to the beginning of the conversation. I don't go out and max out all the time. I have to cycle the stress. This all produces recovery.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great way to think about it. I think people, when you're younger, you don't think about it because you recover so easily and you kind of learn the hard way. So if you're listening to this, learn the slightly easier way by listening to Tony talk about how important that is.
It is. When you're younger, you can get away with a whole lot of stuff. And a lot of young lifters don't get away with it. They get hurt.
Yeah, it's true.
And then they look back and when they're 50, they're like, oh yeah, I wish I wouldn't have done that when I was 22. But you did.
Yeah.
So we can do.
So during the cut specifically, I imagine recovery becomes even more important.
I didn't recover.
Yeah.
I didn't.
It's hard to recover,
I had to
right?
stop.
Yeah.
I didn't. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I see as a tangent. I see a lot of other lifters who want to cut some fat and their progress looks great. And I'm like, you guys are awesome. Me, I was like a shriveled raisin. I was holding on for dear life. I was like, it was really hard to perform. My recovery had to stop. I was doing some running on a really nice outside trail at that time. And I remember I just said, I have to just walk at this point.
Yeah.
And so I had no ability to recover from anything. I was and mentally it was taxing because I felt like kryptonite. Yeah. Just felt so weak. Right. But the deficit was to be maintained. That was the priority. So I maintained the deficit and accepted all those costs. Until I started eating again, and then I recover fine.
Yeah, and I want to highlight that because you were at the you were pegged at the upper limit of what we'd recommend per deficit. You were basically going all out at 1% a week. And sometimes it even creeped past that because you were just pretty disciplined.
It did.
And like you said, that was your priority, and we kept the duration. I mean, it was only 6 weeks, right? Whereas you could go half that rate, but now you're doing it for 3 months. And it's a different trade, right?
Yeah. So my expenditure was about, I don't know, 2,900, 3,000 on the cut. And my intake was 2,000. When I dipped below 2,000 is when I was like, can't do it. So I was hitting about 1,000 calorie deficit a day for 6 weeks?
Yeah.
Right.
It's big. Yeah.
It was a lot.
It is. And that's right around the point. That 1,000 calories seems to be around the trigger point for a lot of people where it starts to go downhill fast.
Oh, does it?
It does. And, we're doing this rapid fat loss challenge now for 2 weeks. And like, I have a similar expenditure as you, 2,900, and I'm eating around 1,600 calories. So,
God,
and I feel
that's crazy.
But you also have a couple refeeds in there. But anyway, again, people listening, it's like, it's not about the quick fix. It's making the trade-off between, how focused you want to be in the fat loss phase and deal with some of those recovery issues, which are just going to happen. It's your body saying, hey, give me more food.
Exactly.
And I'm going to release some fat to give you energy.
Exactly.
Versus, taking a little bit more lightly but dragging it out for a lot longer.
And that's the thing. I didn't want to drag it out because I already feel like I wasted enough time doing, other stuff in life. I want to catch up. I want to make gains.
Yeah.
So I want to do the shortest possible cut. Yeah. But you made a good point that if you're going to cut or bulk or train or do anything, you have to be consistently put in the effort over time. Like, even though I only had a 6-week cut, every single day I took everything. Every single meal was very, very serious. Stuck with it, got to the end goal, right? It's just like training. If you want to build up your bench, it's going to take a long time. You can't switch goals.
Yeah.
You got to stick with it.
Yeah.
You'll get the goal. You'll get the result. Why do you think so many kids take PEDs?
Yeah, no, for sure.
They don't want to do that.
A cut like yours is a short-term, quote unquote, extreme, but a controlled extreme done the right way to get it over and done with. So speaking of your cut, because you talk about learning and education, what did you learn either in general from nutrition and specifically from that cut, like top 2 or 3 takeaways?
Well, about my body, I realized that my body downregulates hunger very quickly. After that first week, I didn't really experience much hunger to a point where now I'm back on maintenance. I don't have much hunger, a little bit. So I learned that my body responds very well to being in deficit in respect to the goal of cutting fat. Again, strength goes down, energy goes down, but my body says, we're going to cut off a lot of fat. So that was a really big learning thing for me. I also realized how simple it was. It was very hard, but it was simple, which is exactly one of the tools of understanding that I wanted to achieve. It was very, very hard, but now I have so many more tools where I can, in the future, say I bulk up a little bit over time to get the strength, and I realize that I hate myself. I want to cut again. I can it's not a mystery on how to do it.
Yeah.
Very simple. It's very simple. What else did I learn? Again, I have a new appreciation for food, and that it is just energy, right? So I came down with COVID about a week ago, right? And I told you that I dipped into a deficit. And how did I keep from going into the deficit? Oreo cookies. Is it ideal? No. But the point is, food is just energy, and I needed a couple hundred calories to keep from going into deficit. So I just had some Oreos, and it's funny because people are like, "No, you ate them because you liked them." It's like, no, I didn't. Wasn't hungry.
Yeah,
I made an objective choice,
it's calorie dense,
based on food being energy. Oreos are easy to eat with some milk. Boom, boom. So in terms of manipulating the energy that comes in, I even talk about food as energy at this point. It's so boring. But in terms of manipulating certain goals, just look at food as energy.
Yeah,
instead of food, because then. When you think of food, you can kind of get a little emotional about it, right?
For sure. It's part of our culture. Yeah. It's part of being a human.
Yeah. Yeah. And I still love food like pretty much everybody. But that's one of the biggest things I learned is I just look at food as energy.
Yeah.
And choices become a lot easier to make when I look at it just objectively like that.
I think that's a healthy mindset, man, because your brain is everything in this process. And you really just hit on a very key principle where the Oreo story, right? Because I will throw in a Pop-Tart if I'm like short on my carbs and I need the energy and I don't want to go in a deficit and I'm not that hungry. And that's okay, because it's within my 10, 20%. and the rest of it's whole foods.
Fine.
In fact, the fact that you don't make it such an emotional thing and you're doing it for objective reasons tells you everything else is pretty dialed in from you're satisfied. You're satisfied with what you're eating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I also, as I said the other day, I also don't sit down with the pack of Oreos in my lap.
Of course.
I say,
exactly.
I'm going to have 2 servings of it.
Yes.
I'm going to have 3 servings because 3 servings is 280 calories. My milk is going to be 70 calories, right?
Yeah.
Portion.
Yeah, you portion it. You put it in a bowl, put it whatever. Yeah.
In the bowl.
Exactly.
It's an event. I chose the event and then it's over. I'm not sitting there blindly watching, peeling through Instagram reels as I go through like 20 Oreos, because then it's like, that's not the goal either.
Yeah, no, I love those little tips because we talk about flexible dieting and intuitive eating, but it's not like a free for all with every single thing you do. You still want to have some guidelines and strategies like controlling your food environment, using portions, using plates, like all those little things, not grazing, having meal times, having times for your meal, not just like free for all. And that's not restrictive. That's just having a little bit of self-discipline or restraint.
Well, you're having restraint. You're making an informed choice on the preferable result.
Yeah.
Right. I don't see it as any more complicated as that. You want a certain result, and then you choose within certain framework. I think when we lose the loss of discipline is like the absence of discipline. It's like, well, I don't know what the result is. I just want to be in the moment where it feels good right now.
There you go.
Eat. Right?
And many of us have been there. Many people listening might still be there. So there's a better way. I want to ask about hunger because you said you didn't have too much. Were you hungry years ago when you were working with a nutritionist and losing weight?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was hungry. She said, if you're hungry, eat.
Yeah.
There were approved foods though, so I would only eat the approved foods. After a while, the hunger did downregulate. I didn't really have much of it. Eating became, I'm not going to say a chore, but it became more boring. And I knew in the back of my head, I knew that it wasn't sustainable in the long term.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is the stuff that we're making. My wife and I will be making this food, and it's like, yeah, it's good, but we're not going to be making all this food for the rest of our lives. This is ridiculous.
All right. So here's why I asked this, because if at one point in the past you were able to get hungry in a deficit and this time you didn't, I know you said that, my body's good at this, but could it also be your food choice and selection? Could it be protein and the fiber, which you were pretty good at getting in sufficient amounts?
That might be the biggest leading question I've ever heard in my life.
You know what I want you to say. Don't worry. Say whatever comes to your mind.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm sure. And I have a lot still to learn about satiety and manipulating satiety.
Yeah.
Whereas if I want to go in a bulk, stay away from certain foods, so increase the hunger. And these are all future lessons for me to master.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know, and I don't expect myself. I don't require myself to know. I only require myself to say, there's more things here for you to learn, to look at.
I mean, that might be a cool thing to go back and look at the patterns in your food and compare to the satiety. I mean, you could even use the satiety index. So for those listening, like there is an index that was done in a study that's well validated that shows you ranks foods by their level of satiety.
You said potatoes.
White potatoes are the most satious. Yeah. They're very high. Like they're like double the next food. And it has to do with the resistant starch apparently in the white potatoes.
Oh, okay.
But if you went, I would pretty much guarantee, because I saw your food logs, I didn't always see the specific foods you had, but I would look at your macros all the time. Your protein was up there consistently. And I think you were pretty good at getting in fiber because you had a lot of whole foods. And right there, those would be the two things people would say keep you full, even in a cut. I'm just mentioning that for the audience because we talk about objectivity, and it's
that makes sense.
We want to know why ultimately. You know? Yeah,
that makes sense. That's a good point. Yeah, and speaking of satiety, I really appreciate rice now because, I just had chicken and rice. I feel great. I'm not like bloated and full.
Yeah,
I feel great. But if I had a bunch of potatoes, it would be like I'm not going to eat for hours. Right?
That's right.
These are all serious, big things when you have nutritional goals and strength training goals. Like these are all actually really big things.
Well, you know what makes potatoes easier to eat? Deep frying them in oil.
That's
cutting
true.
them up and deep frying them in oil makes them easier to eat. And actually, that's physiologically a thing. The fact that there's fat there, anything with fat. So people don't realize this. Like any fat at all you add to anything, fat is a magical macro that makes you want to eat. And there's something about that mechanism that you add fat to something, you eat it. I mean, packaged food.
That makes sense. It's a survival thing because survival, evolutionary wise, we want to add fat to store energy because we may not have food in the wintertime because we're still cavemen.
That's right.
We forget that we forget that we're cavemen because we have trucks and houses. But evolution doesn't move so fast to say, okay, we're not, we're out of those environmental conditions anymore. We're going to downregulate this fat necessity. No, we want fat to store energy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing. That's why you start with.
That's why it's unnatural. Yeah. Unnatural for all you people who want abs. Not natural. You need fat.
That's so funny. It's so funny, but it's true, right? That's why your fat ends up getting pretty low on a cut, just naturally. That usually makes it kind of easier to get through calorie wise. All right, let's get back to training a little bit, kind of going back and forth between these. You said earlier that barbell training is a mental activity expressed physically. And you kind of explained what that meant, but can you elaborate on the mental struggles or the barriers that you had to break through in that process?
Well, I mean, when I was growing up, I was never instilled with a lot of confidence, right?
But,
so the grind of barbell training really, it filled that void that had been there for a while. So on a personal level, it was like self-therapy, right? When you're dealing with barbell training is not just about the muscles. And I can't stand I even hate saying that because it's about tissues. It's about the tendons, the ligaments. It's about the neurological changes, the metabolic change. It's about so many more things than just muscle. And I think once I realized that it was a lot more than just moving load, because you got to figure out how the load is to be moved and when not to move the load, right? And the effects of moving that load. For example, like I had my rotator cuff got a little sore months ago. I don't know doing what, but guess what? Like those are tendons. I mean, you're talking, you know what I'm talking about, and they heal very slowly. The muscles are fine, but the tendon is sore, right? So you have to adjust the training, and that's a mental thing. To not go to figure out how exactly to work around this obstacle. It's
true. Yeah.
And training is a bunch of obstacles, especially after I envy the NLP people. I just add 5 pounds every day. Add 5 pounds. I can't do that anymore. Even like the keep it simple, I can't do that. I keep it as simple as I can, but the programming and the training has gotten pretty complex. And the way we navigate complexity and overcome it and solve those obstacles is the mind. The brain is the only thing that's going to do that. We are not going to accidentally figure out how to blow past a plateau on our bench. We're not. You're going to get stuck. I see it all the time in the gym. People do stupid stuff because they just lift emotionally.
Yeah. So
when I say lifting is a mental thing expressed physically, it's really your brain has to be involved at every stage. It's not optional. It has to be involved, or else you will not progress. You're not going to progress anywhere.
Yeah. We just went into some deep stuff there, which is worth bringing up because we do talk about here the health benefits of lifting, right? The bone density, you mentioned tendons, ligaments, hormones are another like a huge benefit. Oh my God, just huge. And hormones are just still this mystery to a lot of people, and it's hard to explain it. But mental health, it's interesting. We're heading into November, which is, I think, Men's Mental Health Month. I'm going to be collaborating with some folks on that from a strength perspective and talking on some podcasts about how lifting affects your mental health. Now, you said it was self-therapy. We know there's physiological change that occurs. I'm not educated in all the research yet. I want to be, but did you ever struggle mentally? I mean, this is more of a sensitive topic, but like anxiety, depression, anything like that lifting helped with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's pretty common. And I think and I don't say that to justify it. I just say that lifting, doing hard things. Again, this is why I really like my approach. If you go 100% at hard things and you require yourself to do the work, you're going to learn something along the way. You're going to get some kind of confidence. You're going to get knocked on your ass, but you're not going to get defeated. Just because it's hard and just because you didn't hit whatever goal doesn't mean you're defeated. It just means you hit an obstacle, bounce off it, do something else. When hard things they bring the best out of us. Really, doing hard things bring the best out of us. And when we're experiencing anxiety is worry about the future, of the unknown future. Well, guess what? Barbell training is in the now. It's in the present. And when you overcome the present, that hypothetical future, it doesn't mean something, because right now you're mastering the now, right? That's how training helps with anxiety. Depression is that feeling. It's really feeling of being low, not being able to do anything. Well, training is literally doing something. You are moving something around, and this is why I encourage people to keep logbooks and your training logs and whatnot, because you'll have objective data. So no matter how you feel, if you're depressed, no matter how you feel about it, you can look at it and say, well, my squat, look at that. I did that a rep from last week. Look at that. There's improvement there, right? So I would say the objectivity of training and the requirement of doing something hard. Hard things bring out the best of us.
Yeah.
Easy things make us complacent and just make us accept things and just go with the flow.
Yeah.
Hard things, they bring out the best of us. They transform us.
I agree.
It's very transformative training. And if we don't put a cap, if we don't predict or try to constrain who we think we're going to be, then we can do amazing things. It's very transformative because it's in the moment. It's a hard thing in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's good for our bodies. It's not like, I always use this example, gaming. When you're gaming, yes, it's going to be hard, but that's really a dopamine dump. Right? Training is not a dopamine dump. It's probably the opposite of it. It's so hard in the moment. You are requiring yourself to do something you might not be able to do.
Yeah.
Right? So it's going to transform you if you let it. It's going to take you places you may not, you'll become someone you may not know. Some people that may find that scary, but just leave the unknown open. Just train and see what happens.
Become someone you may not know. That
you may not
that's
know.
a self-identity thing. Like you're transforming your identity. I love it.
Just let it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Surround yourself with other people that work hard and just see what happens. You don't have to have certainty of what will happen. And I think that the idea of certainty is really destructive. It's like, no, we don't need to. I have no idea what my numbers will be or what condition I will be in a year. All I can control is this moment right here, this week. This week's programming is the only thing that's in my control.
Yeah.
And I'm going to crush it.
You're going to crush it.
Do you think I wanted to get COVID? You think I wanted to get COVID when I was rocking my program? No, but it was out of my control.
Oh yeah, I didn't want to get surgery.
I'm recovering.
I hear you, man.
There you go. Exactly.
It's going to set you on your ass, like you said, but it doesn't stop you from moving forward in some way.
No.
It's funny you say that because a lot. So for me, I talk about that a lot, but I also experienced it early on when I finally figured this whole thing out. But when others tell me what you just said, so for example, I actually wrote an email about this to my list this morning. A friend of mine earlier this week finally got a rack and barbell. No, he didn't even get his rack yet. He didn't even get his rack yet, right? Yeah. He just started deadlifting and he did it in secret. And then because he was embarrassed maybe from his wife, or his wife didn't believe he would go through with it. And literally he said from like the first session when he realized he could just do something and then the next one do a little more, he said, I just started to get confident. I just started to feel better about myself. I'm like, there you go, man. Like, it's incredible. It happens to everyone.
Exactly.
And you will, if you're a beginner, you will make progress of some kind. You just will. Yeah. I mean, unless you get unless you get in an accident and get totally something. But yeah, it's incredible.
You will get confidence. Doing hard things produces confidence. Doing easy things, it's going to keep you just insecure and depressed.
Yeah.
No.
There you go.
Do hard things, you will find your confidence skyrockets.
For sure. Mm-hmm. So if you could offer one piece of advice that would make the biggest difference in someone's journey toward this ideal identity of a stronger, healthier person, and maybe something that's radically changed your own life that you wish you knew when you were 20, what would it be and why?
Well, nobody cares about you or your progress or your look nearly as much as you do. When you're 20, you believe that other people do. You get the looks, you have the feedback on people, you get the likes online. We have this idea that attention is an accurate assessment of how other people's place value on us. We think that other people are carrying us around with them all day long. That's just not true. So my advice would be just accept that Nobody's walking around with us in their minds and in their hearts every day. And the reason they say that is so that we can look at ourselves and say, are we acting according to internal validation or external validation? Because, and I revisit this question frequently because it's easy to develop an ego. I get it. And when you start to appreciate that other people don't really care what you're doing, you can see, what I'm doing right now or what I just did, yeah, that was for other people.
Yeah.
But it lets you let it go. If you think that if you convince yourself that other people think about you a lot more than they do, you will allow yourself to deceive yourself into doing things for external validation because you think it's so important. It's not.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that my calisthenics taught me, even though people in the gym, they thought it looked so cool looking. They didn't care. They just walked away, right? So I would say internal validation versus external validation. Identify the external, get rid of it, focus on internal because that produces real satisfaction and indefinite fulfillment. It's you being fulfilled. You're not doing it for other people. Yeah. You want your abs, make sure you're doing it for you.
For sure.
And test, yeah. And if you want to lift your heavy weights, make sure you're doing it for you. Ask yourself the tough questions. Ask yourself for that. Look for the external validation in your life and get rid of it because then you're really going to become more confident.
I agree. It actually gets you to take actions on things you might not have otherwise because you think people are judging you or you're going to be embarrassed. I mean, my experience with that is with everything I do with this coaching stuff, every single step I took was like, what are they going to think about me? It doesn't matter. Just do it. Yeah. And what is there a nuance there where it comes to doing things to help other people, knowing that there's also external validation? Do you know what I mean? Like, so what am I trying to say here? So for example, I will gladly share with the world what a client says about how I helped them because I'm proud that I helped them. Is that seeking external validation or is that, what do you think of that?
You're sharing it for who and for why. That's really the question. It's hard for me to answer that right now, but it's what are you looking for? What are you searching for? What is the reward you're searching for? If the reward is to open up doors for other people to potentially improve their own lives, I think that's pretty cool because it shows it's not about you. But if the reward is getting the attention upon you and that, hey, I taught this person this thing, then that's more of your ego getting involved and that's more external validation.
There you go.
So I think really we got to look at the basis of the reward we're seeing and then test ourselves. Like, why do I want that reward? Why do I want that reward? Right?
Perfect.
And that will help us answer those kind of questions because it can get hard to delineate those kind of things.
Yeah, you're a philosophical guy. I had to ask because you think about this stuff. All right, so the magic question that you knew was coming. What question did you wish I had asked, and what is your answer?
Oh gosh, yeah, this is hard. Even it's coming. I would say, why have I become so critical of? Why have I become so critical of physique? I see that I think physique, there's a place for physique. I think it's very easy to get lost. Again, this goes exactly with my external validation point. That's probably why I brought it up. I think it's very easy to get lost in the physique train and if we oversubscribe to the external validation. And this is why I'm very critical of modern bodybuilding in terms of the average Joe and the average Jane doing bodybuilding. If you're competing, if you're making money, that's one thing. But if you're the average Joe or Jane who's showing up a couple times a week and you're doing the bodybuilding, I'm critical of that. So that's probably the question that flows through external validation. That's probably the question that I would have wish you would have asked.
Okay. Yeah.
If you could read my mind.
Yeah. No. That's why I ask it. No, that's good. I mean, we have talked about that, the physique side of things, and it's interesting for me because when I talk to people who have goals, true deep goals to change their identity, to be a better role model for their kids, to be healthier, whatever, along with that always is some level of physique enhancement. Anyway,
I want to look better.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I think that's okay. The question is, why are you doing it? Like you said, is it the external validation or is it your own just, hey, I want to be comfortable when I see that person in the mirror, Yeah.
And that's the thing about physique too, which I realized is so much different than strength training. Strength training is objective improvement, measurable objective improvement. Well, physique training is based on looking better, which is a belief system.
Yes,
we believe
it's a construct.
to look better.
It's true.
It's a belief system. So you can ask 10 different people. So that's why I'm critical of it, because if someone says, I want to look better, and I'm thinking, according to what? Because if you get someone's opinion, you could get 5 opinions today, and someone like me will be like, I don't think that looks great. That could crush somebody.
Yes.
Not intentionally, but because physique, it's a belief system. And I think if people are honest about that and accept that, it's a belief, it's very subjective and it changes, I think people could be a little bit more calm about the physique rather than thinking that it's this objective, I'm going to look better. And it's like, well, you know that not everybody thinks that, right?
Yeah.
I guess just because I'm objective based with strength training. It really
but it's a valid thing for people to think about, because there are standards, and women face this a lot in society with the body image standards. And there's also the fact that when we're focusing on performance and strength, there are lots of periods where you go through where you're not going to have what somebody would call an ideal physique, because you don't want to. You want to have the extra fat. You want to have the leverages. You want to be eating because you're building muscle, and you know you're going to live a long time that way and be healthy. Exactly. But then it's like, how do you combine all these things? So kind of combining physique with health, with strength, and finding that sweet spot where it kind of all works together is a nice place to be if you can get there. I get that a lot of people are very overweight, right? And we understand that for them, it's a health issue. And of course, they are going to, I think, even objectively have an improved physical appearance once they lose all the weight. But again, it is a construct. So, cool, man.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. A lot of people are underweight too, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's
that's true.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've seen it in the gym a lot.
Yeah.
And it's like, might want to gain a little bit,
I hear you, man. But, I hear you when I see the 18-year-old boys walking around. I'm like, man, if only I had a hold of you right now in your prime, get you put the shoulder and rice in and start lifting.
Again, but there's that belief system of it looks better.
The surfer dude abs, Okay, man. Well, where do you want listeners to reach you, or what resource do you want them to check out?
I'm just average Joe. I don't really. I'm not very present on social media. I mean, I'm in Andy Baker's group, but I don't coach. I'm not, I don't think I have much on Instagram.
Yep.
But, I mean, if someone wanted to contact me, they could just contact me through my email. Right. But other than that, just average Joe.
Okay. How about this? We'll put a link to the Facebook group, which you're in. So if people want to come in, they can reach you there. And we'll put a link to Andy's club. I don't mind. I love promoting his club. It's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. I'm in your group too. Yep. I love, dropping into your group,
Yeah.
And seeing what's there. It's a lot of fun stuff there. It's pretty cool.
It is. It's like, it's not a massive group, but it's highly engaged and helpful. We help each other out, which is, I constantly say that because I'm not trying to grow it to like tens of thousands of people. I'd rather have people that really care about being there.
But you're not trendy. Yeah. It's not trends. It's not do this one thing and you'll do, it's flexible dieting, which is hard to reach people on because people want a product. Give me product. I make change. Yeah. It's not that.
They've got laser fat removal for that.
Laser fat removal.
All right, man. Just to put the extreme on it. Okay. So, man, this is a lot of fun. We went down some nice rabbit holes, some philosophy, metaphysics, training, nutrition, the whole thing. So thanks for coming on.
Oh, it was a lot of fun, man. Thanks.
Man. So, all right. Talk soon.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Wits and Weights. If you found value in today's episode and know someone else who's looking to level up their wits or weights, please take a moment to share this episode with them. And make sure to hit the follow button in your podcast platform right now to catch the next episode. Until then, stay strong.